The moment the judge said he had one final piece of evidence, my stepbrother's smile didn't just fade, it fractured, like something inside him snapped clean in half. I watched from the plaintiff's table, hands clenched so tightly my nails cut into my palms, as the courtroom lights dimmed just enough for the screen to glow with the files he swore he'd deleted forever. The timestamp flickered. His username appeared. His IP address followed like a final nail sealing a coffin. He stopped breathing. Or maybe I just stopped hearing him. Because in that instant, when his face drained of every lie he'd ever told, I knew the truth. He was finally trapped by the very digital trail he built to destroy me. My mother used to say that blending families was like stitching two torn fabrics together, the seams always showed. When she married Daniel's father, I was 15, awkward, cautious, and already too familiar with the quiet ache of being overlooked. Daniel, on the other hand, knew exactly how to command a room. Even back then, he wore charm like armor and manipulation like a second skin. He learned early that people rewarded confidence, even fake confidence, and he wielded that knowledge with precision. If he borrowed something and forgot to return it, the adults laughed. If I asked for it back, they said I was being dramatic. Every small injustice taught him he could twist reality, stretch it, own it, while I was taught to swallow my discomfort to keep the peace. The pattern followed us into adulthood. I worked steadily, quietly, building my savings with the discipline of someone who knew money was safety. Daniel flitted from job to job, always with a new excuse, a new person to blame. But the worst part wasn't that no one saw through him. It was what they did, and they still chose to believe his lies because it was easier than confronting the truth. Before everything unraveled, my life felt, if not perfect, finally steady. I'd built a small but meaningful routine, work at the insurance office during the day, evening walks with coffee in hand, podcasts in my ears, and the quiet satisfaction of watching my savings grow. Every dollar in that account was a step toward independence, a future where I could sign a lease without anyone's help, without Daniel's shadow brushing against my plans. I'd even toured a tiny apartment with buttery light spilling across its hardwood floors. I remember running my fingers over the windowsill, imagining shelves of plants, a place where silence meant peace instead of tension. Just a few more months of saving, and I would finally move out of the house our patched-together family still drifted in and out of. There was a gentle sweetness in those weeks, sleep coming easily, mornings starting without dread. I didn't know it then, but stability has a sound, a softness, and once it's threatened, you never forget its absence. Because calm doesn't announce its ending. It just breaks. It happened on a Tuesday morning, the kind that should have been forgettable. I logged into my bank account before work, expecting the familiar comfort of numbers inching higher each month. Instead, the screen loaded with a hollow white void where my balance should have been. 14 cents. At first, I genuinely thought it was a glitch. My heart didn't even race, just hesitated, confused. I refreshed the page. Logged out. Logged back in. But the number didn't change. It sat there, mocking me, a single decimal place away from nothing at all. My savings, 3 years of skipped vacations, overtime shifts, and hand-me-down furniture, were gone. When I opened the transaction history, a high-pitched ringing filled my ears. A series of transfers had been made over the past 2 weeks, always at odd hours. Midnight. 3:17 a.m. A few minutes before dawn. Each transfer sent to an unfamiliar account, but the digital fingerprints were impossible to ignore, same device type. Same login pattern. The same IP block is used by someone inside our house. My stomach dropped. I checked the timestamps again. 2 transfers were made on nights I remembered hearing footsteps in the hallway. Another morning, Daniel borrowed my laptop for 5 minutes because his phone was dying. A cold certainty began coiling in my chest. This wasn't random. This wasn't a stranger. This was someone who knew me, someone who knew exactly where to strike. When I confronted Daniel, I expected denial. I didn't expect him to weaponize it with surgical precision. He didn't flinch when I told him the transfers traced back to our house. Instead, he laughed, actually laughed, and said I'd probably messed up my own account and was too embarrassed to admit it. He crafted the lie so casually it almost sounded rehearsed. Within hours, the narrative had spread through our family like smoke through dry wood. My stepfather pulled me aside first. "Are you sure you didn't mismanage something?" he asked gently, as though I were a fragile vase someone had nudged too close to an edge. My mother followed, her voice soft but strained. "Honey, stress makes you forget things sometimes." Daniel stood behind them, arms crossed, nodding sympathetically, an actor hitting every mark. "Look, if Ava's dealing with anxiety or something, we should support her," he said. "But accusing me? That's just unfair." Each word tightened around my throat like a noose. Suddenly, I wasn't a victim, I was a problem. An unstable girl inventing conspiracies, grasping at shadows, blaming the golden sun. He even went as far as telling our relatives that I'd been acting paranoid lately, planting seeds that sprouted fast because everyone already found it easier to believe Daniel's charm than my discomfort. Meanwhile, he cleaned his tracks. Changed passwords. Factory reset devices. Deleted files with the confidence of someone convinced he was invincible. And every time he caught my eye across the living room or kitchen, he gave me that same smirk, thin, cold, triumphant. The kind that said, "You'll never prove it. And no one will ever believe you." I didn't break all at once. It happened slowly, like being pulled underwater inch by inch until you realize you can't breathe anymore. For days, I moved through the house like a ghost. Meals tasted like nothing. Sleep dissolved into shallow hours haunted by the sound of Daniel's laugh and my mother's hesitant doubt. Every room felt contaminated by his lies. Every mirror reflected someone smaller than I remembered being. One night, sitting on the floor of my bedroom with my bank statements scattered around me, the dam finally cracked. The numbers blurred through tears I couldn't stop. I pressed my fists against my eyelids, shaking, whispering to no one, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm just wrong. That's how my friend Layla found me, curled in on myself, drowning in shame that wasn't mine. She didn't speak at first. She just sat beside me, letting the silence settle. Then, quietly, she said, "Ava, people like him count on you breaking. But you're not broken. And this," she lifted one of the printed logs, "this isn't an accident. These patterns don't lie." Her voice steadied something inside me, something I thought I'd lost. "Don't give him what he wants," she whispered. "Fight back." And for the first time since the money vanished, I exhaled. The morning after Layla came, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. The house was silent, Daniel had gone out early, but the air felt different, as if the walls themselves were finally done swallowing his lies. I made coffee with steady hands. Not because the fear was gone, but because something stronger had taken its place, resolve. Every transfer, every timestamp, every smirk he'd thrown my way hardened into a single truth. I would not let him erase my future. By noon, I was sitting in the clean, bright office of a local attorney named Mara Levine, a woman whose handshake was firm, whose eyes missed nothing. I laid out everything, the transfers, the access logs, the family's sudden distrust, the digital crumbs he'd tried to sweep away. When I finished, she sat back, expression sharp. "Ava, this isn't just theft," she said. "This is premeditated fraud. And he thinks he covered his tracks. He didn't." For the first time, someone believed me without hesitation. And that belief lit a match in my chest. We filed the initial report that day. And as I signed my name, I realized something profound. I wasn't just defending my savings. I was reclaiming myself. Mara wasted no time bringing in a digital forensic expert, a quiet, sharp man named Rylan who treated data the way archaeologists treat ancient bones, with reverence, patience, and absolute certainty that the truth was buried somewhere beneath the surface. He started with my laptop first. "Factory resets rarely delete everything," he murmured as he sifted through fragmented code. "People underestimate how loud their digital footprints really are." Within an hour, he found the first crack, traces of an unfamiliar user profile created around the same nights the transfers occurred. Hidden behind layers of overwritten files was a string of autosaved passwords, my banking app among them. Then came the IP logs. Rylan pulled my account metadata and laid the access points side by side, my usual logins, weekday mornings from my laptop. The fraudulent ones, 2:14 a.m., 3:57 a.m., 5:02 a.m. All from the same private IP address associated with the upstairs Wi-Fi extender. The extender Daniel installed for better gaming speed. Rylan's brows lowered. He wasn't just guessing passwords. He captured sessions. This took planning. Next, he checked the transfer authorization forms. They looked legitimate at first, PDFs bearing my e-signature. But when he magnified the metadata, the deception snapped into focus. Forged, he said. Signature copied, timestamp manipulated, and the device registered to someone named Dan K. My chest tightened. He kept digging, uncovering fragments of deleted messages, drafts where Daniel rehearsed excuses, instructions to someone named Rick about scrubbing logs, and even a half-erased note reminding himself to wipe Ava's browser history. Piece by piece, Rylan assembled the skeleton of a crime Daniel thought he had buried. When he finally looked at me, his expression was almost sympathetic. He tried very hard to disappear, he said. But he left too many fingerprints. The noose was tightening. And for the first time, I could feel it tightening around him, not me. I thought the nightmare ended with my stolen savings, until Rylan called Mara and asked us both to come in. His voice was calm, but there was an undertone that made my skin prickle. When we arrived, he had a separate folder waiting. I kept digging, he said, because the patterns felt practiced. He projected a new set of logs onto the wall, bank statements, emails, transfer attempts, all belonging not to me, but to people in my own family. My aunt. My stepfather's elderly mother. Even my cousin, who'd once lent Daniel money he never paid back. Each case showed the same digital blueprint, late-night logins. Access from the same IP cluster. Forged authorization PDFs, identical formatting quirks, identical device signatures. Daniel hadn't just stolen from me. He had been harvesting our relatives for years. My stomach twisted as Rylan clicked through the evidence. Transaction attempts that failed only because some accounts were locked. Emails drafted but never sent. Notes to himself about waiting until tax season or target their savings account next. Mara leaned forward, jaw tight. This isn't impulsive theft. This is a pattern scheme. He's defrauded multiple victims, and he's been refining his method with each one. A cold shiver crawled down my spine. I wasn't the first. I was just the first one who caught him. And now, instead of a simple family dispute, we were staring at something far darker, a serial pattern of digital fraud woven through the very family that protected him. The game had changed. And Daniel had no idea the storm was heading his way. The days leading up to the hearing felt like living inside a tightening clock, every tick louder, every hour sharper. Mara transformed her office into a war room. Screens displayed login charts, forged PDFs, device fingerprints, folders were color-coded by relevance, each tab a piece of Daniel's unraveling facade. We lead with the timestamps, she instructed, tapping the screen. Then the device signatures. Then the forged forms. Simple, logical, undeniable. She coached me through testimony, teaching me how to breathe when nerves crept into my throat, how to pause instead of rush, how to hold my ground even when Daniel's attorney inevitably tried to twist my words. You are not here to perform, she reminded me gently. You're here to tell the truth. And the truth is on your side. Still, anxiety clung to me like a second skin. Some nights I woke in a cold sweat, certain Daniel would find some last-minute way to slither free. Other nights, I pictured facing him, seeing that smirk, that entitlement, and strength flared in my chest like a slow-burning flame. By the eve of the hearing, something inside me had shifted. Fear was still there, but it no longer led. I was ready. Not just to testify, to confront the person who thought he owned my silence. The courtroom felt colder than I expected, sterile light, polished wood, the faint hum of an overhead vent. Daniel sat at the defense table in a crisp button-down, trying to look composed, but his knee bounced under the desk. His attorney, a sharp-featured man named Whitaker, leaned toward him, whispering instructions like a puppeteer steadying a trembling marionette. Judge Halden entered, calm and unreadable, and the air tightened. Mara stood first. Your Honor, she began, voice steady, this case is about deliberate, calculated digital fraud. We will show that the defendant accessed Ms. Hale's banking sessions multiple times, forged authorization forms, and transferred her savings to an account he controlled. The evidence is technical, but it is also irrefutable. Whitaker rose immediately, a confident smile tugging at his lips. Your Honor, the defense intends to show that the plaintiff, Ms. Hale, acted irresponsibly with her finances, potentially mismanaged her account, and is now seeking to blame my client, her stepbrother, for her own oversight. This is a family matter exaggerated into a criminal fantasy. A low murmur rippled through the benches. Mara's jaw flexed, but she remained composed. Our first witness, Rylan, took the stand. Mara walked him through the logs, the timestamps, the device signatures. He explained how a factory reset doesn't truly erase footprints, how the forged PDFs bore Daniel's editing metadata, how the IP addresses matched the upstairs extender. Whitaker's cross-examination struck hard. You're saying this couldn't have been Ms. Hale using her own device at unusual hours? No, Rylan said plainly. Because her device was powered off during the fraudulent logins. Whitaker pivoted. What about the possibility that someone outside the home accessed the Wi-Fi? You can't prove it was my client. Rylan didn't flinch. The extender uses MAC filtering. Only approved devices can connect. The defendant's devices were approved. Whitaker bristled, but continued. And these PDFs, you claim the plaintiff didn't sign them. Isn't it possible she forgot? Mara rose. Objection. Speculation. Sustained, Judge Halden said without looking up. Whitaker's irritation sharpened. He shifted tactics, redirecting attention toward me, painting me as forgetful, stressed, irresponsible. But every contradiction he tried, Mara countered with cold precision. By the time Phase 1 ended, the tension in the room was thick enough to swallow. Daniel still looked confident. But his knee hadn't stopped shaking. When it was Daniel's turn to take the stand, he walked up with the confidence of someone who believed charm could still save him. He straightened his shirt cuffs, flashed a polite smile at the jury, and began answering Whitaker's questions with practiced innocence. I would never steal from my own family, he said smoothly. Ava must have mixed something up. She's been under stress. We all knew that. Whitaker guided him gently, letting him shape a narrative where he was the supportive stepbrother trying to help an overwhelmed sister. It was clean. Controlled. Almost convincing. Until Mara stood for cross-examination. Mr. Keller, she began, you testified you had no knowledge of the unauthorized transfers? That's correct. And you never accessed Ms. Hale's accounts? Never. Mara clicked her pen once, sharp, deliberate. Could you explain, then, how you knew the transfers occurred between 3 and 4 in the morning? Ms. Hale never mentioned the times. Daniel froze. Just 1 second. A single slip. But it echoed through the silent courtroom like a gunshot. Whitaker's head snapped toward him. Judge Halden's brows lifted. I assumed, Daniel stammered. People usually, commit cybercrimes late at night, right? It wasn't a crime until today, Mr. Keller, Mara said softly. Yet you spoke of it with the precision of someone who watched the timestamps himself. The jury leaned in. For the first time, Daniel's polished composure cracked, and the truth began leaking through. Just when the courtroom settled into a charged silence, Mara announced, the plaintiff calls one final witness. A man in a worn blazer stepped through the side door, nervous, avoiding eye contact. Daniel's reaction was instant and visceral. His posture snapped rigid, eyes widening in a way that told the jury everything before a single word was spoken. The man cleared his throat. My name is Eric Calloway. I used to work with Daniel in the IT department at Grantwell. Whitaker immediately objected, but Judge Halden overruled him. Eric's hands trembled as he testified. Daniel paid me cash to help him cover his tracks. He asked me to alter logs, create fake activity reports for his devices, and he wanted timestamps shifted so it looked like someone else accessed the accounts. A ripple tore through the room. He said his family trusted him too much to question him, Eric continued, voice cracking. But he knew Ava would. That's why he needed an alibi. Daniel's face drained of all color. With one witness, one confession, the fragile web he built, and believed unbreakable, collapsed in on itself. He didn't just lose control of the narrative. He lost the last person willing to lie for him. Judge Halden reviewed his notes in a silence so dense it felt like gravity itself had thickened. Daniel stared at the table, hands clasped tightly, as though holding himself together by force. When the judge finally spoke, his voice was calm but unyielding. Mr. Keller, the evidence presented demonstrates a deliberate, sustained pattern of digital fraud. You exploited access to your family's network, falsified financial documents, and manipulated timestamps in an attempt to conceal your actions. Daniel flinched. The testimony of Mr. Calloway, combined with the forensic findings, leaves no room for reasonable doubt. Whitaker tried to object, but Judge Halden raised a quiet hand. I am ordering full restitution to Ms. Hale, including all stolen funds and damages. Additionally, criminal charges for digital fraud and identity misuse will be forwarded to the district attorney. A stunned murmur rippled behind us. Daniel's shoulders collapsed inward, like he'd been struck. The arrogance, the smirk, the confidence he wore like armor, all gone, leaving only a frightened man who finally understood he wasn't untouchable. This court stands adjourned. The gavel struck once, clean, final. And just like that, the power Daniel believed he owned shattered beneath the weight of the truth. When the courtroom emptied, I stayed seated for a long moment, letting the silence settle around me. Not the suffocating silence I'd lived with before, this one felt clean, spacious, like a window finally cracked open after years of stale air. Daniel was escorted out a side door, not once looking back. For the first time, his absence didn't leave a shadow behind. It left room. Mara placed a hand on my shoulder. You did more than win, she said. You reclaimed what he tried to take. And she was right. The restitution would rebuild my savings, but the real victory was something deeper, the return of my own voice, my own certainty. I walked out of the courthouse lighter, steadier, no longer the girl swallowed by doubt, but the woman who faced down a lie and refused to let it define her. For the first time in years, I felt whole. If there's anything I learned, it's this: digital footprints don't disappear, people just convince themselves they do. My stepbrother thought he could rewrite reality, bury lies under a few deleted files, and lean on family loyalty to shield him. But the truth has a way of resurfacing, especially when someone finally finds the courage to fight for it. Betrayal from family leaves the deepest bruises. But it also teaches you the strength you never knew you had. And sometimes, justice comes in bites, not bullets.